Everything okay?
Yeah, everything's fine.
Laughter and endless days spent in the sun. I thought we were happy. We shared everything, our dreams, our fears, and our hopes for the future. It was a simple life, one that I was content with. But just like that, things began to change, though I couldn't pinpoint exactly when. The first hint came one evening when Amelia mentioned that Oliver, her first love, was back in town. "Oliver's back from Australia," she told me, her voice casual, as if she hadn't just dropped a bombshell. I froze, my mind racing. "Oliver? From your past?" She nodded, her gaze shifting away from mine. "Yeah, just catching up, you know? It's been years." I wanted to ask more. Why now? Why him? But I didn't. Instead, I smiled, trying to mask the growing discomfort that twisted in my stomach. "Right, I'm sure it'll be nice for you both." "Yeah, it'll be fine," she said, her eyes flickering back to her phone. She wasn't looking at me, and that stung. I didn't like how she said fine, as though she was reassuring herself more than me. It wasn't like her to be so distant. I let it go, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Over the next few days, Amelia seemed different. Her smile didn't reach her eyes the way it used to, and she'd often glance at her phone, typing messages with a quickness that suggested she was trying to hide something. I noticed the subtle things, how she kept her phone face down when we were together, how she avoided eye contact when I asked about Oliver. "Everything okay?" I asked one afternoon as we sat together in the living room, the familiar hum of the city outside the window. She hesitated before responding. "Yeah, everything's fine." But I knew it wasn't. I could feel it in the way she withdrew, like I wasn't quite the person she wanted to be with anymore. Every time I tried to talk to her about Oliver, she'd brush it off, saying it was just a friendship, that there was nothing to worry about. "Are you sure you're okay with it?" I asked, trying not to sound too anxious. "I mean, it's your ex, Amelia. I don't want to be that guy, but I'm just asking." She gave me a soft smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're being paranoid, babe. There's nothing between us anymore. It's just a catch-up. I promise." But there was a tone in her voice that didn't sit right. It was too quick, too defensive. And I couldn't help but wonder why she didn't reassure me more, why she didn't make it clear that I was the one who mattered, not Oliver. I didn't want to accuse her of anything, but the doubt started creeping in, and once doubt takes hold, it's hard to shake. Days passed and it got worse. I caught myself staring at her phone when she wasn't looking, trying to catch a glimpse of the messages she was typing. I'd ask her what they were talking about, but she always gave me vague answers. "Just some old memories," she'd say. Or, "Nothing important." But I wasn't blind. I knew something was off. She wasn't herself. She wasn't the girl I had fallen in love with, the one who shared her thoughts with me, who confided in me. Now, it was like I was an outsider looking in, and the more I tried to understand, the further she seemed to pull away. The tipping point came one night when she was getting ready to go out with friends. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone when she walked by, phone in hand. She paused in the doorway, her back to me. "Where are you going?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Out with the girls," she replied, not turning to face me. "I'll be back later." She didn't even say goodbye, just slipped out of the door, leaving me alone in the silence. That was when I knew. Something wasn't right. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but I held back. I wasn't ready to face the truth. What if I was overreacting? What if I was imagining things? But deep down, I knew I wasn't. There was a part of me that feared what I might find if I dared to look deeper, if I dared to ask the questions I didn't want to hear the answers to. I was drowning in uncertainty, and there was no lifeline in sight. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something was definitely off. Amelia and I had always been close, but recently, it felt like she was slipping away. At first, I told myself I was just being paranoid. I mean, things were still good, right? But as the days passed, I found myself questioning everything. I noticed the little things, how she would leave the room when I walked in, how she stopped looking me in the eye when we spoke. It wasn't huge, obvious changes, but it was enough to make me wonder. I tried to push the thoughts aside, focusing on work, trying not to obsess over it. But it wasn't easy. One evening, I came home to find her on the couch, staring at her phone, fingers flying across the screen. I watched her for a few moments, not wanting to interrupt. But it was like I couldn't ignore it anymore. "Who are you texting?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light, casual. She didn't even glance up. "Just Oliver. You wanted to catch up. You know, old friends." Something in me twisted at the mention of his name. "Oliver?" I repeated. "You've been talking to him a lot lately." She finally looked up, her eyes meeting mine for a brief second before she looked back at her phone. It's nothing really. Just catching up. Nothing for you to worry about. I felt a twinge of something between jealousy and fear. I'm not worried, I don't know. It's weird, that's all. She shrugged it off. You're being dramatic. That was the moment I knew something wasn't right. I didn't push it further though. I couldn't. Later that night, she told me she was going out with some friends. Sarah and Emily are having a girls' night, she said, her tone almost too cheerful. You're welcome to join us, but it's really just for us girls. I nodded, forcing a smile. Yeah, sure. Have fun. But she didn't look at me when she said it. She just grabbed her bag and left without another word. I sat there for a while, the silence in the apartment feeling heavier than usual. That's when my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment before opening it. Hey, it's Sarah. How's everything with you and Amelia? The text read. I frowned, confused. Good. Why? The reply came almost immediately. You know, Amelia doesn't really appreciate you. You deserve someone better. Just thought you should know. I stared at the message, the words sinking in slowly. What the hell was that supposed to mean? Before I could process it, another message followed. Amelia's great, but she's not the best for you. You're a good guy. You deserve better, trust me. I was taken aback. My fingers hovered over the keys. I wasn't sure what to think, but part of me wanted to ignore it. Something about it felt wrong. I put my phone down and tried to push it out of my mind. But then the messages kept coming. Each one a little more insistent, a little more pointed. She's not good enough for you, Sarah would say. You could do so much better, you know that, right? The messages weren't just from Sarah though. Emily chimed in too, asking me about my day, offering little bits of advice that felt more like manipulation than friendship. I wasn't sure how to respond. Part of me wanted to lash out, to tell them to back off, but another part, something darker, was curious. What if they were right? What if Amelia wasn't really the one for me? I tried to ignore it. I tried to ignore them. But I couldn't. The messages kept coming like a constant drip of doubt filling up my mind. It didn't help that Amelia was still so distant. I was becoming a stranger in my own relationship and I hated it. One night after the girls' night out, Amelia came home late. I was sitting up in bed waiting for her. She didn't apologize or explain anything. She just slipped into bed beside me like nothing had happened. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Amelia, I said, my voice low but firm. What's going on? She sighed, not looking at me. What are you talking about now? I'm talking about you and Oliver, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. And the messages I've been getting from Sarah and Emily. Her eyes flicked to mine for a second, but she quickly looked away. You've been talking to them? Why does it matter? Because they're telling me things, Amelia. They're telling me you don't deserve me. That I could do better. And honestly, I'm starting to believe it. She was quiet for a long moment. Then finally she spoke. You're being paranoid. You've always been like this. Always suspicious, always accusing me of things. I'm not accusing you of anything, I said, my voice rising. I just want to know what's going on. I don't understand why everything feels so different. You don't trust me, she said, shaking her head. This is ridiculous. I'm going out with friends and you can't even handle that. You're controlling and it's suffocating me. Her words hit me like a slap. My chest tightened and I tried to keep my composure, but it was slipping away. So that's it? I'm the problem? Amelia stared at me, her expression hardening. Yes, maybe you are. I felt a coldness spread through me. I had no idea where to go from here, but I knew one thing for sure. Something was broken and I wasn't sure if it could be fixed. I hadn't expected things to go this far. It all started with a few harmless messages from Sarah, little things that seemed innocent at first. You're so much better than Oliver, she'd said. Amelia doesn't even appreciate you. I told myself I was just being polite, that it was nothing more than friendly conversation. But then came the next one and the one after that. Slowly, the seeds of doubt Sarah had planted began to sprout. Each message felt like a quiet invitation drawing me in further. Amelia was still distant, her eyes always on her phone, her mind somewhere else. And me? I was alone. She was slipping away and I didn't know how to stop it. I was sitting on the couch one evening when I saw it. Another message from Sarah, one that made my heart skip a beat. I miss talking to you. You deserve someone who truly sees you. Someone who actually cares. It felt wrong, but at the same time it was a relief. The loneliness I'd been feeling for weeks was suddenly gone. For a moment I felt seen. I'd been craving that connection and there it was, right in front of me. I could feel the temptation in my fingertips, the urge to reply. So I did. I typed out a simple message, "I miss talking to you too." Before I could second-guess myself, the reply came quickly. "Good. I've been thinking about you a lot lately." I sat back, the weight of the decision settling in my chest. This wasn't right. I knew that. Amelia wasn't the one who'd pushed me away, at least not directly. But I felt it, her growing disinterest, her constant meetings with Oliver, her excuses. "Just catching up," she'd say. But it didn't feel like just catching up. It felt like something more. And then Sarah's messages kept coming. Late at night, when I couldn't sleep, I'd find myself reading them over and over. Each one pulling me deeper into something I knew I shouldn't want. One night, after another cold encounter with Amelia, I found myself looking at my phone, Sarah's name flashing across the screen. She had messaged again. "Can I call you? I know it's late, but I need to talk." I hesitated. Should I? It wasn't like I had anything else to do. The silence between Amelia and me had become deafening, and Sarah's messages were the only thing that made me feel like I wasn't completely invisible. I clicked on her name. "All right," I typed, "let's talk." The phone rang almost immediately. "Hey," Sarah's voice was soft, familiar, like a balm to my nerves. "How's everything with you?" "Not great," I admitted, my voice carrying more weight than I intended. "Amelia's been distant. And Oliver, he's still in the picture. I just don't know where I stand anymore." "I get it," Sarah said. "It sounds really tough. I don't want to sound like I'm taking sides, but you deserve someone who actually values you. Amelia doesn't see you the way she should." "I see you. And I know I'd appreciate everything you are." Her words hung in the air. I wanted to believe her, to lean into the comfort she offered. But there was this small voice in the back of my mind telling me this was wrong, that this wasn't the way I should be dealing with it. But the loneliness, the doubt, it was suffocating. And Sarah's voice, soft and full of understanding, was like a lifeline. "I'm just so tired of feeling like I'm invisible," I admitted, my voice thick with emotion. "She's gone, Sarah. She doesn't even care." "You're not invisible," Sarah whispered, her tone lower now, more intimate. "You deserve someone who sees you, someone who wants you." I swallowed hard. "I know you're right, but I'm not sure what to do anymore." "You don't have to figure it out alone. I'm here. I want to see you. You deserve to be happy, you know?" The words wrapped around me like a warm blanket, a temporary escape from the cold reality I was living in. I don't know what I'm doing anymore," I confessed, the weight of it all finally crashing down. "But right now, this talking to you, it feels good. Like I matter." There was a long pause before Sarah spoke again, her voice almost a whisper. "I'm coming to London soon. Maybe we can meet up. Talk more, face to face." My heart raced at the thought, and for a moment I let myself dream of it. It felt like the answer I'd been waiting for, a way out of this suffocating silence. "I'll be there," I said before I could stop myself. "I want to see you." "Good," Sarah said softly, the smile in her voice. "It's going to be just us. No distractions. We'll figure this out together." I didn't know what was happening anymore, but I knew one thing: I was on the verge of something. Something that could either save me or ruin everything. And I wasn't sure which one I wanted. That night, I went to bed with my thoughts tangled in Sarah's words. I didn't sleep much. How could I? Every thought was consumed with what I was about to do, and whether I could live with the consequences of this choice. But it was too late to turn back now. I didn't expect to go through with it. But there I was, standing in the dimly lit bar in London, waiting for Sarah. My mind kept racing, caught between guilt and something else, something I couldn't name. When I saw her walk through the door, a wave of relief washed over me, followed quickly by a pang of something darker. She smiled and my heart skipped a beat. "Hey," she said, walking up to me, her voice soft and inviting. "You look different in person." I smiled, trying to cover up the nerves bubbling inside me. "Yeah, well, seeing you here in London feels like a dream." She laughed and we sat down. I tried to keep the conversation light, talking about everything except what I really wanted to talk about. But I couldn't help it. The words slipped out, the frustration I'd been holding onto for weeks now spilling out. "I don't even know what to do anymore, Sarah," I confessed, rubbing the back of my neck. "Amelia? I thought we were fine, but now it feels like we're strangers." Sarah tilted her head, her eyes studying me with a sympathy I hadn't expected. "You don't deserve to feel that way. You're a good guy and you deserve someone who actually sees that. Not someone who keeps pushing you away." I sighed, leaning back in my chair. That's what I thought too. But maybe I'm just imagining things. "No," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a whisper. I've seen it. The way she looks at you like she's already checked out. You're just stuck holding on to something that's slipping away. Her words sank deep, and for the first time in a long time I felt like someone understood. The walls I'd built up came down, and before I knew it, we were talking more freely, exchanging everything I hadn't dared say to Amelia. I wasn't sure if it was the alcohol or just the sheer weight of everything I'd been holding inside, but I found myself inching closer to Sarah, her presence comforting in a way I hadn't felt in months. And then, in one swift movement, her lips were on mine. It wasn't supposed to happen. It shouldn't have happened. But I kissed her back, and for those few seconds, it was like a weight had lifted. The guilt, the loneliness, all of it seemed to fade away. For the first time in weeks, I felt alive. But as soon as I pulled away, reality hit me like a freight train. I shouldn't have done that, I whispered, my breath shaky. Amelia, Sarah cut me off. Forget about her for a second, she said, her voice gentle. You deserve to feel wanted too. I closed my eyes, trying to push away the rush of emotions. The kiss felt like a betrayal, but at the same time, it was like a release I didn't even know I needed. When I got back to Brighton, I walked into the apartment, my stomach twisted in knots. Amelia was sitting on the couch, her face unreadable. She didn't even look up when I walked in, and I could feel the tension between us thick enough to cut with a knife. What's wrong? I asked, my voice tight. She didn't say anything at first, but then she held up my phone, her eyes blazing with fury. What is this? I froze. The messages from Sarah. The kiss. It was all there, laid out in front of her, undeniable. My heart dropped. I hadn't expected this, not like this, not so soon. Amelia, I started, but my voice faltered. I didn't know what to say. I could feel the walls crumbling around me. You're just like every other man who pretends to care, she spat, standing up. You pretend to be all about me and then you betray me in the worst way possible. I didn't. I tried to explain, but she held up a hand, stopping me. No, don't, she said, her voice shaking with emotion. You think I didn't know? You think I didn't see the way you were pulling away, the way you were looking at me like you were already gone? I knew it, but I stayed. I kept holding on because I thought maybe you were worth it. But clearly I was wrong. My chest felt tight, my heart breaking with each word she said. I wanted to reach out to apologize, but I couldn't move. She was already gone, slipping away from me before I could catch her. I wasn't in love with Oliver anymore, she said, her voice breaking. I wasn't, but I was planning on breaking up with you. I was going to leave before you could hurt me like this. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had been so consumed by my own actions, my own mistakes, that I hadn't seen the truth. She'd been preparing to leave me. She had already decided to let go, and now it was too late for me to fix anything. Amelia, please, I reached out, but she shook her head. No, she said, her eyes filled with tears. It's too late now. And with that, she turned and walked out of the door. I watched her leave, my chest aching, knowing that I had lost everything. The relationship that I had thought was unbreakable, the one that had once felt like home, now it was just gone. I stood there for a long time, the silence in the apartment deafening. And for the first time, I realized that I wasn't just lost without Amelia. I was lost without myself. Our relationship was shattered, and there was no coming back from it. I woke up to the sound of rain tapping against the window. The first few days after Amelia left were the worst. I couldn't stop replaying the argument, the anger in her voice, the look on her face when she walked out the door. I told myself I'd get over it, that I'd move on. But the silence in my apartment was deafening. I spent most of my time staring at my phone, waiting for a message from her that never came. I scrolled through old photos, remembering a time when things felt real. I couldn't even get myself to leave the apartment. I was stuck in a loop of regret, blaming myself for everything that went wrong. But I couldn't keep doing this. I needed to get away. I needed a change of scenery, even if just for a little while. When the work trip to Manchester came up, I took it as my chance to clear my head. I arrived in Manchester a day early, hoping the quiet of the city would help me think. But all I could think about was Amelia. I wandered through the streets aimlessly, my feet taking me to places I didn't even plan to visit. It was in one of those moments of aimless wandering that I met Olivia. She was sitting at a cafe by herself, a book open in front of her, but her eyes focused on something beyond the pages. I noticed her as I walked by. There was something about her, something different from anyone I'd met in the past few months. I almost didn't approach her, but something pulled me toward her. Is this seat taken? I asked, pointing to the empty chair across from her. She looked up, a little surprised but smiled warmly. No, go ahead. I sat down, the silence between us feeling comfortable. I didn't know what to say, but she broke the silence first. "You don't look like you're from here," she said, her voice light but inquisitive. "I'm not," I replied. "Just here for work. Trying to get away from everything." She raised an eyebrow, clearly curious but not probing. "Everything?" "Yeah, personal stuff," I muttered, avoiding eye contact. I wasn't sure why I was being so open, but there was something about Olivia that made me want to talk. "You know," she said, taking a sip of her coffee, "sometimes running away from your problems only makes them worse. But sitting still doesn't do you any favors either." I chuckled, the humor escaping before I realized I was smiling. "You make it sound so simple." "It's not," she replied, leaning back in her chair. "But it's the first step." Her words stuck with me. There was something about her calm energy that made me want to listen. We talked for a while longer, mostly small talk, but I found myself opening up about the breakup, about my struggles. She didn't judge me, didn't offer any quick fixes, but she made me realize that I had been stuck in a cycle of self-blame. It wasn't just about what had happened with Amelia, it was about what I had allowed to happen to myself. After that conversation, I felt lighter. It was like a weight had been lifted, just by someone listening, by someone reminding me that my mistakes didn't define me. "You need to stop blaming yourself," Olivia said, as if reading my thoughts. "Yeah, things didn't work out with Amelia, but you're not the sum of your mistakes. You can choose to be better. And that starts with how you see yourself, not how you think others see you." I was taken aback. I hadn't realized how much I had been focused on what everyone else thought of me, on how I was perceived. I'd spent so much time wondering why Amelia left, what I could have done differently, but I never stopped to think about what I wanted. I never stopped to think about who I was outside of my relationships. "I guess I've been kind of lost," I admitted, finally meeting her eyes. "I've been so focused on fixing everything with her that I didn't even know what I wanted anymore." Olivia nodded, her gaze soft. "It's easy to get lost in someone else. But the only person you need to answer to is yourself. You have to figure out what makes you happy." Her words rang in my ears long after we parted ways. I found myself thinking about what she had said as I walked back to my hotel. I hadn't realized how much I had been drowning in my own insecurities, how much I had been letting my past define me. The next few days in Manchester felt different. I began to take small steps toward rediscovering who I was, outside of the pain of my past relationship. I started focusing on the things I had put off for too long. My career, my interests, my own well-being. It wasn't easy and there were still moments of doubt, but Olivia's words kept coming back to me. "You're not the sum of your mistakes." I returned home from the trip with a new sense of clarity. I wasn't ready to dive into another relationship, not yet. But I wasn't as lost as I had been. I realized that the healing had to start with me, with learning to love myself again. And maybe, just maybe, that was the first step toward becoming someone better. I didn't expect to feel this way, but the change in me was undeniable. After the breakup, I threw myself into everything I had neglected: work, fitness, hobbies. I wasn't just going through the motions anymore, I was living. Slowly but surely, I felt like I was coming back to myself. I didn't care about what anyone else thought anymore. For once, I was doing this for me. And I started to feel good about it. But then Oliver reappeared. I ran into him at a conference in Birmingham, of all places. He was standing there, smiling like nothing had changed, acting like he hadn't torn apart everything I'd once believed in. I could see it in his eyes. He was still the same arrogant, charming guy who thought he could have anything and anyone he wanted. "Oliver," I said, my voice tight. I tried to keep calm, but something inside me twisted at the sight of him. He grinned. Well, if it isn't my old competition. How've you been?" "I've been good," I said, forcing the words out. "Better than I thought I would be, actually." Oliver raised an eyebrow, looking me up and down. "I see that. You've changed a bit, haven't you? You look good." I didn't want to let his compliment get to me, but it did. It gnawed at me because I knew what he was really trying to do. He was trying to get under my skin. "I've been focusing on myself," I said, trying to steady my voice. "On things that actually matter." His smirk deepened. "That's nice. Always good to have a hobby. Amelia never really understood that about you, did she?" Something inside me snapped. "Don't talk about her," I said through gritted teeth. "I'm not that guy anymore." "You and her? That's over." He laughed and the sound stung. "I can tell. You've certainly changed, but don't think for a second that you're better off without her." I stared at him, my fists clenched at my sides. I could feel my jealousy rising, that familiar feeling of being overshadowed by him. I wasn't angry with Amelia anymore. No, it was Oliver I resented. He had always been the one to make me feel small, to make me feel like I wasn't enough. Even now, standing here, he was still trying to make me doubt myself. "I'm not trying to prove anything to you," I said, my voice steady now. "But I'm done with being the guy who's always in your shadow. I've moved on, Oliver. I've changed and I'm better for it. I'm not the same person I was when we all used to hang out in Birmingham." He looked at me like I was some sort of joke. "Is that what you think? You think you've won?" "I don't need to win," I said, my voice firm. "I just need to be myself. The way I should have always been." Oliver's expression shifted, a mix of amusement and disbelief. "You think that makes a difference? Do you really think Amelia cares about that?" I took a step forward, my chest tight. "I don't need her to care about me anymore. I don't need anything from her. And I certainly don't need anything from you." There was a long pause. Oliver's smirk faded slightly, but he quickly masked it with that same cocky grin. "You're pathetic, you know that? You think you've got everything figured out, but deep down you're still that same guy who couldn't keep her. You'll always be second-rate." I didn't flinch. Instead, I stood taller, looking him directly in the eye. "You're right about one thing," I said. "I'll always be second-rate to you, but that's because I've never been you." Oliver's face darkened for a split second before he composed himself. "You'll regret this, you know." "I won't," I said, and I meant it. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over something. My heart was steady, my mind clear. I wasn't the broken person I once was. Oliver turned and walked away, but I didn't watch him go. I didn't need to. I had finally stood up for myself, and it felt better than anything I had imagined. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about proving something to him or Amelia. It was about me proving something to myself. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was in control of my own life, my own choices. I took a deep breath, feeling stronger than I had in months. This was the new me, someone who didn't need anyone's approval, least of all Oliver's. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally on the right path. I never expected it to happen this way. After everything that had happened, I had started moving on. Slowly but surely, I was rebuilding my life. I wasn't angry anymore, just resigned. And then the news came. It started with a message from Sarah. "Have you heard about Oliver?" Sarah's message popped up one morning as I was sipping my coffee. I almost didn't open it, but my curiosity got the better of me. "No, what happened?" I replied, already dreading the answer. "His career is crumbling. Everything he touched is falling apart. It's kind of poetic, don't you think? The guy who always thought he could do no wrong." I let out a bitter laugh. Karma, I thought. It was a strange satisfaction, knowing that Oliver, the one who'd never let me forget how much better he was now facing the consequences of his own arrogance. I didn't bother replying. I didn't need to. I knew what Sarah was getting at. She thought I'd be happy about it, maybe even take pleasure in his downfall. But I didn't. It wasn't that I felt sorry for him. It wasn't even about Oliver anymore. I'd already moved on, and he was just a chapter in my past. But then it got worse. I was at work when another message came through. This one was from Emily. It was unexpected. We hadn't spoken much since everything went down, and I had no interest in engaging with her. But curiosity got the best of me once again. "Amelia's moved on," Emily wrote. "She's seeing someone new." I paused, staring at the screen. A part of me wanted to ignore it. Amelia had every right to move on. She had every right to do whatever made her happy. But the small part of me that was still clinging to the past felt that familiar pang of jealousy, even though I knew it was pointless. We were done. And yet, the fact that she had already moved on stung in a way I hadn't expected. I didn't know how to respond, so I didn't. I closed the message and pushed it out of my mind. That was the last I'd hear from Emily, at least for a while. Later that day, I got another surprise. Amelia herself reached out. Her name appeared on my screen, and for a split second, I froze. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, and part of me wondered if I was ready to face her again. I clicked on the message. "Can we talk?" it read. My first instinct was to ignore it, to keep moving forward. But something stopped me. Maybe it was closure. Maybe it was curiosity. Whatever it was, I opened the message. "Sure," I typed back. "What's on your mind?" Her reply came almost immediately. "I've made a mistake. I want to explain." I wasn't sure what she meant, but I agreed to meet her anyway. When we sat down at a cafe the next afternoon, I could see the difference in her. There was no more anger in her eyes, no more of that defensive edge she used to carry. She looked tired, almost defeated. "I don't know how to say this," Amelia began, looking down at her hands, "but I've been thinking a lot about us. And about you. About everything." I didn't say anything. I just waited, watching her closely, wondering where this was going. I was wrong, she continued, her voice shaky. About everything. About how I treated you, about leaving. I thought I needed something else, something more, but I was wrong. I sat there listening, but part of me was already checked out. It wasn't that I didn't care. I had once cared more than I ever thought I could for someone. But the truth was I wasn't that person anymore. I had already moved on. Amelia's return was inevitable, but it didn't matter now. Amelia, I've already moved on, I said quietly. I'm not that guy you knew anymore. I'm different now. Her face dropped, a mix of regret and guilt flashing across her features. I understand, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Look, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, I don't blame you for anything. But I'm not going to sit around waiting for someone who doesn't want me. I've spent too much time being someone else's version of who I should be. She didn't say anything for a while. The silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken words. Finally, she nodded, as if accepting that this was the end of the road. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, she whispered. I really am. And that was it. Amelia got up and walked away, leaving me with my coffee, my thoughts, and my past. As I sat there, I realized something. I had truly moved on. I wasn't angry, I wasn't sad, I was just at peace. As I walked back to my apartment later that day, I thought about Sarah and Emily. They had tried to manipulate me to make me doubt myself, but in the end they had lost too. Sarah's messages of sympathy were hollow now, and Emily's attempt at reconciliation felt too late. They had made their choices and I had made mine. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was free. And I knew now that everything that had happened, every mistake, every heartbreak, had led me to this moment. Karma had caught up with everyone, and I was the one who was finally standing tall. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. And it was enough. It had been a few weeks since I'd last heard from Amelia. After everything, I wasn't sure what to expect when she reached out. But there I was, sitting in a cafe in the city, watching her approach. My heart didn't race the way it used to. There was no panic, no urgency. She was just there. Hey, Amelia said softly, sitting down across from me. Her voice was different. Softer. Vulnerable even. Hi, I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. My eyes stayed focused on my coffee cup, my hands wrapped around it like it could anchor me. I've been thinking a lot about us, she said, her words hesitant, like she was unsure how to continue. I didn't say anything. I wasn't sure what to say. I had moved on. I wasn't the same person I used to be when it came to her. But I couldn't deny that a small part of me, deep down, was curious to hear her out. I wasn't honest with you, Amelia continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Not with you, not with myself. I was scared of being abandoned. I looked up at her then. There was genuine remorse in her eyes, but it didn't change what had happened. You were scared. I repeated, the bitterness creeping into my tone before I could stop it. You left because you were scared? She nodded, her eyes welling up. I know it doesn't make sense. But I thought if I left first, I wouldn't have to face the hurt when you did. I couldn't help but feel a little angry. A little hurt. And then what, Amelia? You pushed me away to protect yourself, but in doing that, you destroyed everything. You left me with nothing. I didn't want to hurt you, she said, almost pleading. I really didn't. But I thought it was better than you leaving me first. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. But that's not what happened, is it? You didn't leave me first, Amelia. You left me behind, and then you let me think it was my fault. I could see the guilt written all over her face. She didn't have any defense for what she'd done. I didn't know why I expected any apology to make me feel better. It didn't. It didn't change the hurt, the feeling of being discarded like an afterthought. I didn't know what I was doing, she whispered. I was just scared. I wanted to come back and make it right, but by the time I realized what I'd done, I didn't know how. I stared at her for a long moment. Her words seemed so hollow now. I wasn't the person who would fall for those promises anymore. I can't forgive you, Amelia, I said softly, the words tasting bitter as they left my mouth. I'm not that person anymore. I'm not the person who begs for your attention. The person who wonders if I did something wrong. I'm different. The silence between us stretched, thick and suffocating. Amelia sat there looking at me like she was searching for something, some sign that I still cared. But I couldn't give her that. I had moved on. She stood up slowly, her hands trembling as she looked at me one last time. I'm sorry. For everything. I never meant to hurt you. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Goodbye, Amelia, I whispered, feeling a sense of finality I hadn't thought was possible. She left without another word. I didn't watch her go. I didn't need to. I had already said everything I needed to say. But then as I was leaving the cafe, I got a message. It was from Sarah. I need to talk to you. Please. I hesitated for a moment, the anger rising up again. I had been avoiding Sarah for weeks, and now she wanted to talk? I wasn't sure what I expected, but it certainly wasn't what came next. Oliver played us both, Sarah wrote. He orchestrated everything. You and Amelia, you and me, all of it. He wanted us to fight, to hate each other. And we fell for it. I'm sorry. I stared at the message in disbelief. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. All this time I had blamed myself, blamed Amelia, blamed Sarah, but it was Oliver who had been pulling the strings the entire time. I took a deep breath. The anger didn't come though. Instead I felt something else. Relief. Relief that the chaos wasn't all on me. It wasn't all my fault. I sat down again, letting the weight of it all sink in. The betrayal. The lies. It had all been a game to Oliver. But I wasn't going to let him win. I quickly replied to Sarah. I don't want anything to do with it anymore. I'm done. I didn't need closure from her. I didn't need closure from anyone. I had found my own peace. And that was enough. As I walked away from the cafe, the world felt different. Lighter somehow. I wasn't carrying the weight of the past anymore. The future was mine to shape, and no one, not even Oliver, could take that from me. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. I never thought I'd be here, but I'm finally starting to feel like I'm healing. It's been months since everything fell apart. Since Amelia, since Oliver, since all of it. I thought I'd never get out of that dark space I was in, but somehow here I am, standing in a new city with a fresh start. Newcastle. A place I'd never considered before, but somehow it felt right. I packed up my things, left Birmingham behind, and stepped into something new. The city was alive, full of possibility. I could breathe here. It was quieter, more laid back, but there was something about it that felt like it could hold me together. The first few weeks were hard. I wasn't used to being alone. Not like this. But in the quiet, I found peace. And I found something else too. Writing? It started as a way to pass the time, just jotting down my thoughts. But before long, it became my way of understanding everything that had happened. I wrote about the past, about the mistakes I'd made, about the things I couldn't control. I poured my soul into every page, every word. One evening, as I sat in a small cafe near the city center, my phone buzzed. It was Olivia. How's the new city treating you? She asked, the usual warmth in her words. I smiled as I typed back. It's different, but good. I'm starting to feel like I'm getting back on track. You've come a long way, she replied. I'm proud of you. I leaned back in my chair, thinking about how much Olivia had helped me through everything. She didn't just listen to me complain or wallow in my pain. She challenged me. She made me see that I could be better, that I was worth more than the mistakes I'd made. Thanks, Olivia, I typed. It hasn't been easy, but I feel like I'm learning. I'm learning how to let go. The phone buzzed again almost immediately. That's the hardest part. Letting go of what hurts. But you're doing it. I could almost hear her voice in those words. It was comforting, a reminder that I wasn't in this alone. I set my phone down and took a deep breath. The weight of the past still lingered, but it was easier to carry now. I wasn't running from it anymore. I was accepting it, understanding that it was a part of me but not all of me. New beginnings, right? I muttered to myself, picking up my pen again and starting to write. It wasn't just the new city that was a fresh start. It was me too. I wasn't the person I was when I was with Amelia. I wasn't even the person I was when I first arrived in Newcastle. I had changed slowly but surely, and every day felt like progress. I met new people, people who had their own stories, their own scars. Some of them were just like me, broken but rebuilding. And there was something beautiful in that, in knowing that I wasn't the only one going through this. One day I met Jake, a guy I ran into at the local bookstore. He was sitting in the corner, flipping through a book of poetry, and I couldn't help but strike up a conversation. You into poetry? I asked, taking the seat next to him. He looked up, surprised at first, then smiled. Yeah, I've always found it helps to make sense of things. You? Same, I said. I've been writing a lot lately. Trying to figure myself out. He nodded. I get that. Writing's a good way to process. We spent the next hour talking about books, writing, and life in general. By the end of our conversation, I felt like I'd made a real connection. Not one of those fleeting, surface-level conversations, but something deeper. Jake wasn't perfect, but who was? We were both people who had been through the ringer, and maybe that's what made the conversation so real. As I walked home that evening, I thought about how far I'd come. The city felt less foreign now, more like home. I didn't need to rely on anyone else to define me. I was starting to see myself for who I truly was, someone who had made mistakes but was learning to forgive himself. That night, I sat down to write again just like I had every night since I'd arrived. The words flowed easier now, like they were meant to be written. I wrote about the new people I'd met, about the lessons I was learning, and about the weight of the past that I was slowly letting go of. I wrote about how healing wasn't about forgetting the pain, it was about accepting it and moving forward. My phone buzzed again. It was Olivia. "I'm glad you're finding your way," she wrote. "You're stronger than you realize." I smiled at the screen, feeling that familiar warmth in my chest. "Thanks, Olivia. I couldn't have done it without you. Take care of yourself. You're doing great." And for the first time in a long time, I truly believed it. I was doing great. I was healing one step at a time. The past was still a part of me, but it wasn't who I was anymore. The journey wasn't over, but it was mine. And that was enough.